Hi parents, this is teacher David Ng, and I come across an interesting question in Facebook that is about trigonometry R formula. So without further ado, let me just present the solution to you here for my Facebook friends and also for my YouTube subscribers. Okay, this is the question that's originally taken from Facebook. So because there isn't any more space for me to write, so I repost this question in my Facebook page, and I actually cut out just only the question without showing you guys this part of the working. So I've mentioned to the parent that he should use R sine x minus alpha instead of plus alpha. The reason is because there is some negative here. So when you expand your R sine x minus alpha, you have R sine x cosine alpha minus R cosine x sine alpha. So let me just show you the answer here. Just quickly present the answer. Because you are supposed to use R formula to solve this question. So what exactly is R formula? R formula, basically, you are trying to express this expression here, which is your R sine x minus, which is your 7 sine x minus 2 cosine x equal to 4 into another form. So if you notice this expression here, right, you can't really solve it. The reason is because there is more than one trigo function. You have your sine function and your cosine function. So that makes it difficult for you to solve them. Therefore, you have to use the R formula. So basically what R formula does is to convert this original equation, which has multiple trigo function, into one trigo function. In this case, it's your sine function. The reason why I choose a negative alpha instead of a positive alpha, which the student used originally, the reason is because this is a negative here. So when you were to expand your R sine x minus alpha, you would end up with your R sine x cosine alpha minus R cosine x sine alpha. You expand this way when you apply the trigonometry addition formula. Okay, you should be very familiar with your trigonometry addition formula. Mainly your sine A minus B equal to sine A cosine B minus cosine A sine B. This is the trigonometry addition formula which you are using. So if I have to expand my sine x minus alpha, my x is your A, my alpha apparently is your B. So sine A cos B is your sine x cos alpha. So minus, and cos A sine B, so cos x sine alpha. And R you multiply in, both you have R, both sides have R. Okay, I hope I explained clearly how come you expand your R sine x minus alpha, you have this. Basically, you're applying the trigo addition formula. in my tuition lesson, right, my tuition class, I will explain further why the addition formula is this way. How come sine A minus B is sine A cos B minus cos A sine B? Yeah, but now due to lack of time, I would just focus on explaining this question. So if you were to do a comparison of your coefficient, you would notice that your R cosine alpha is 7 and R sine alpha is 2. The reason is because there's 7 sine x. If 7 sine x minus 2 cosine x is your R sine x cos alpha minus R cos x sine alpha, right? By examining this expression, you'll notice that if sine x refer to this sine x, because these two sides, right, there's only one part has sine x, which is this. This guy, there isn't any sine x. So it's sine alpha, so it's different. So this is sine x, so this is sine x. So therefore, R cosine alpha definitely belongs to 7. So you equate R cosine alpha as 7 and R sine alpha as your 2. Okay, so yeah, on the same token, you can see that your R sine alpha is your 2. Because this one is cos x, this cos x, by comparing coefficient, you could see that your R cosine alpha is 7 and R sine alpha is 2. Once you establish this, you would learn that you can use your R sine alpha over R cosine alpha. That is your sine divided by cosine. You have your tangent alpha. Okay, sine alpha over cosine alpha is tangent alpha, and the R you cancel off. So tangent alpha is 2 over 7. If tangent alpha is 2 over 7, you can work out your alpha. Your alpha basically is tangent inverse 2 over 7. And you can find your alpha using a calculator. You would have tangent inverse 2 over 7. You should get 15.95 degrees. Okay, 15.95 degrees. And if it is positive, right, you have the third quadrant that's also positive. You need to plus 180. That is your 195.95. This is the third quadrant. Because tangent alpha is positive, so it's only first or third quadrant. So these are for the first quadrant, this for the third quadrant. And after you work out this for the third quadrant, you need to indicate that this is not applicable. Then you'll be wondering, how come not applicable? I still need to write this out. The reason is because you do not want to give reasons or excuses for your marker to penalize you during exam. Therefore, it's very important to write out 195.95 degrees and indicate in a bracket that it's not applicable. So your alpha is only 15.95 degrees. Then next, you need to work out your R. Your R apparently is the square root of 2 square plus 7 square. That's your R. So allow me to explain simply how come your R is the square root of 2 square plus 7 square. So if you notice, right, if I were to square this part here, I would have your R square cos square alpha is 7 square. And this one, I have R square sine square alpha is 2 square. So if I were to use my R square cos square plus R square sine square, that will give you 7 square plus 2 square. And if I factorize out my r square, I have cos square alpha plus sine square alpha. And this is still 7 square plus 2 square is 49. 49 plus 4. 7 square is 49. And 2 square is 4. You have 53. So sine square alpha plus cosine square alpha is equal to 1. That's the trigo identity. So r square is 53. Your r would automatically become square root of 53 or negative square root 53. In this case, the negative part is not applicable. How come it's not applicable? The reason is because for R formula, it's understood that your R is always positive. So for formality, you just write positive and negative you just indicate not applicable. Because in maths, when you square root anything, there's always a positive component and a negative component. So therefore, you can rewrite this expression 7 sine x minus 2 cosine x would then be square root 53 sine x minus 15.95 degrees. Okay, this is the R formula. So why am I doing this? As I mentioned earlier, the purpose of doing it in R formula is because I want to remove one of the trigonometric function here. If you notice the original equation, you have your sine function and your cosine function equal to an integer, and that makes it hard for you to solve this equation. So in order to solve this equation, you have to convert this expression 7 sine x minus 2 cosine x into this form, which is the R formula form. So you have your square root 53 sine bracket x minus 15.95 degrees. This expression is apparently your 7 sine x minus 2 cosine x. They are the same expression. It's just that you're expressing it, you're converting it into different forms. So when you convert this to your square root 53 sine bracket x minus 15.95 degrees, you are actually eliminating one of the trigonometric function. So right now you only have a sine function instead of having a mixture of sine and cosine. So that's the reason why you have to apply R formula so that you only have one trigonometric function. So the original expression equal to 4. Therefore, this expression here will then be equal to 4. And you are asked to solve for your x, right? So right now I have this R formula. So my sine x minus 15.95 degrees will then be equal to 4 divided by square root 53. Then your x minus 15.95 degrees will then be equal to sine inverse 4 divided by square root 53. So your x minus 15.95 degrees will then be equal to sine inverse 4 over square root 53. You would have 33.33 degrees. So since this is a sine function and it's positive, therefore it's first and second quadrant. So the basic angle is 33.33 degrees. So I have to use 180 minus 33.33 degrees. You would have 146 33.67 degrees. This for the first quadrant, and this is the second quadrant. So your x will then be 33.33, 33.33 plus 15.95. That'll give you 49.28 degrees, or 146.67 plus 15.95. You have 162.62 degrees. So depends on the instruction on the question paper. If the question paper asks you to keep it to one decimal place for your degrees, you can write this as 49.3 degrees, and this is 162.6 degrees. And it's mentioned find all angles between 0 to 360. So you have found all the angles for x. So I hope I answer your question for this question. So R formula apparently is a very important topic in A-Maths. The reason is because definitely it will come out in your O-levels and your school prelim papers. And our formula always consists of at least 8 marks, 5 to 10 marks, and usually it's about 8 marks for our formula. And after you find the R formula and finding the angles, right? Sometimes they'll have a part 2, ask you to solve, hence find this expression equal to some formula, or ask you to prove something. So that is the typical question that will come up for your school prelims and your O-levels as well. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to give me a message on my Facebook Messenger, or either that, or you can give me a call, as in drop me a WhatsApp at 9795-1295. So I hope this presentation serve to answer your question and serve to clarify any doubts. So I wish your child all the best in their O-levels. Yeah, that's all. So thank you. Bye-bye.